to all the dispossessed youth of Africa, for perpetuation of communion with ancestral spirits through the fight for African freedom, and in the firm faith that the dead, the living, and the unborn will unite to build the destroyed shrines. Sila. Kembo Kembo. Natata Nzambi Yamazulu. I hope I pronounced it right. That basically means all praises, glory, honor to the Most High. And it says, so Nini Nanini, the all-consuming fire, the mighty ones of our forefathers, Abana Yiseka Yakuba, and their seed waking up and scattered abroad, Siemi Queen. Hey! That's from Kubasabi ya Congo. I love it, beloveds. When you share, I just feel the power of those words. It's like when I speak, Kikuyu, I feel it. When I pray in Kikuyu, I feel it, beloveds. And so thank you so much for sharing that. Do go ahead and always share, power words, words of greetings from wherever you're from in the comments. And let's just get those vibes out there. Thanks to every single person that has subscribed to the channel. I appreciate, love you so much. Thanks to everyone that supports us on Patreon. We do share much more about what is going on that platform, so definitely consider joining us. Beloveds, I think that, I was going to talk about how not all skin folk are kinfolk. And I think it's very, very important that we recognize that, because Babylon has always tried to group us all together. And they literally created concentration camps that they later called Kenya and Tanzania and Uganda and Burundi and Nigeria. And we've never been free from these concentration camps. They imposed their system on us. They wiped out systematically the elders that had the knowledge and all our history, all our her story, everything. It was like a memory wipe. And then when we wanted to go for independence, we couldn't go for independence as kingdoms and nations. We had to go for independence as the concentration camps. And then they had already groomed their puppets to take over and ensure that we remained in those camps and we never united. There's a reason why they created 54 or 55 nations, beloveds. It was never to help us. And it was not done randomly. And I think that's something that we need to understand, and understand. None of these countries were created by accident. And I've talked about this so many times, how they took nations like the Ma Nation, which is basically made up of the Maasai and others, and they split it right down the middle. Whereas in other places, they took warring nations that had never agreed, that had totally different cultures, totally different beliefs, totally different worship systems, and they put them together in a confined space, knowing that they would forever be doing battle and they'd be in these little concentration camps. Kenya is a concentration camp. Nigeria is a concentration camp. South Africa is a concentration. That's how we have to look at it. It's not our idea. It's not our concept. It's the system of slavery. It's the system of colonialism that has made, that has kept the situation the same. There is nothing different between us and the only difference between me and my grandmother is that at least she connected, she lived in that time. She lived in that time when she grew up innocent, totally immersed in the culture. And then, by the time she was passing into the spirit world, we were totally in the Babylon system. We are growing up in the Babylon system, and we're going to spend our, sunset days in the new reality and world that we're creating, depending on the choices we make right now. But I think we have to start looking at these countries, stop having so much ownership for Kenya and Nigeria and go Zambia and go Zimbabwe. Like, it's not ours. That concept doesn't belong to us. It's an alien concept that wasn't there before. And when they sat down and carved, some people say during the day was it 1884, when they met to carve up Africa. During the day, they did the agreements, and then during the night, they did the rituals. Don't get it twisted. This was all sorcery. This entire thing that we're seeing is sorcery, beloveds. And so we have to detach from the ideas of I'm a Kenyan, I'm a Nigerian, I'm a Zimbabwean. And it's hard to do that because they almost have given us no other identity. But you see, so much was done. Like they sent the explorers and the missionaries here on purpose first to figure out the lay of the land and the peoples. So they were very clear in putting the Tutsis and the Hutus together in, Rwanda and Burundi, and making one more in one country and one more in another country, so that they knew that those tensions would boil forever. They were very specific in putting like 42 tribes here in Kenya. And then the Mzungu has kept most of the most fertile land. I mean, we have a Mzungu who owns 100,000 acres, beloveds, of land that belonged to one community, and then they were pushed onto another community. And now the communities are always fighting on each other, on the land issues and not addressing the real elephant in the room. And, they already groomed so many of those first presidents, either before or after. They had to play ball because they inherited these massive systems. And then they realized, oh my gosh, we need money to run it. Oh, I need a loan. And there's always, how Babylon works, man. Babylon is the great seductress. But you see the difference with Kenya and Tanzania, for example. Tanzania has 120 tribes, beloveds. They thought it would all work out wrong for Tanzania, but Tanzania was blessed and highly favored to get like Nyerere, the teacher, as the first president. And he put capitalism and all the Western stuff that they were trying to bring in aside. And he united the peoples. They created one language with Kiswahili. They created one culture where people intermarried. I mean, here in Kenya, you're from one tribe and you say you want to marry someone else from another tribe, your family will still trip. And the thing is, we don't even have the full and clear understanding because we see ourselves as tribes. And I told you, tribes is like a very low word, a very low vibrational word. It's like a collection of like families. When we were nations, and you see nations were bundled up together, we don't know, on the subconscious level, there's so much that we know. On the spiritual level, there's so much that is hidden. So you don't even know why you as a Kikuyu don't get along with the Kalenjin or whatever the situation is, or the Luo. There's so many things. I'm just telling you about Kenya. But what happened is Nyerere in Tanzania brought all of the communities, all the nations together, and they all took on that identity of Tanzania and made it their own, made Swahili their main language. Like English is not the main language in Tanzania. That's one of the reasons it's very hard to invade Tanzania. Whereas in Kenya, the founding father, he chose to, go the capitalist way first. And that was done by manipulation because this was supposed to be like, an apartheid South Africa in Kenya. But certain rituals were done and it didn't happen. Those are stories for other days. Let me know if you want me to share that. But they went the capitalist way. And then what has happened is that election after election for over 50 something years, the politicians have manipulated those differences, those tribal differences, but we don't even understand our nations. All that knowledge was totally erased from our minds, beloveds. Anyway, let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, Africa.
Welcome back, beloveds, to Wake Up Africa on the Dr. Mumbi Show. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki. I just had to take a short break there because we really have to. I think we've wrongly diagnosed what these nation states are, because they're states that we are born into and have to be part of, and then we go into this and then we're controlled by a system that governs our mental, the government, that is now even being remote controlled by the former colonizers. And they are manipulating everything. And so, when they give us this national pride, national identity, national this, it really takes away from the reality that this is not what our ancestors wanted for us. They didn't want us to be identified. What is Kenya? What is Zimbabwe? What is Malawi? These are concepts that are not our own. And if you understand that everything comes from the spiritual and manifests in the physical, then you have to see the different nation states from a spiritual perspective in order to understand, and understand what exactly is going on. You can't look at Kenya and say, oh, it's just our borders and, this and that. Because let me tell you, when we wanted independence, different nations wanted their own independence, beloveds, to go back to the way they was, but that was not an option. You were told, yo, get freedom first as Kenya, as Tanzania, as Ghana. And then once you figured all that out, then you guys can come together and you can decide, okay, Kenya, this was our land, this was the so-and-so's land. And by the time, and let's not forget that the former colonizers still controlled the majority of the land in many of the nations and still does till today. And this thing of private land ownership means that a lot of ancestral people's land is in this capitalist system and is legally belongs to other people, beloved. So if we don't recognize, if we feel, loving your nation is almost like loving the slave state that you're in. Because they've created a totally delusional concept that doesn't exist, that never existed. And then they've endeared us to it, to the point where we have a song for the nation. We have all these social structures for the nation. We have a flag for the nation. We have all this stuff. We even celebrate the birth of that particular nation. And then we can only move as representatives of that nation. But everyone sees this as okay, and it's not okay. Which is why there's always been a push for unity. But beloveds, the whole system is rigged. Like, if you try and think of unity on a physical level, it can't happen. But we need to start developing these ideas and kind of talking about what Spirit is telling each and every one of us. Because the Most High, our ancestors and the ancient ones, have a plan, but they're holding it like super close to their chest. And so we can only see a few steps ahead. And you have one piece of the puzzle, I have the other piece of the puzzle. So it is up to us to start to have these conversations so that we can change the collective. But at the same time, we need to be activating and changing our individual realities. And part of it is disconnecting from the narrative. I keep saying disconnecting from the foreign narrative. And part of the foreign narrative is these countries of nation, these nation states. It's a mental state they've created in here. Because when you're driving around and you're crossing borders to Tanzania and everything, you don't know this is Kenya and this is Tanzania. It doesn't tell you that. But you'll see different nations, different communities as you move along. So, you'll see certain communities here, and then when you get closer to maybe the coastal side, you'll see other communities. But there's no lines saying this is, only some borders. But if some places there is no border, you can just go through. Because it's just the communities are told, you're Tanzanian, I'm Kenyan, and I need to get that to get my child a birth certificate, to get my passport, to get my ID. But when we come here, it's just, And so it's a mental state. Kenya is a mental state. Saying I'm Kenyan is a mental state that they force me in, because in order to live in their matrix, I have to have that. But we have to expand beyond being Kenyan, Nigerian, South African, and look at ourselves as African, as we have our nations. But the most important thing now is our continental unity, so that we can return to our nations, because we'll never be able to return to our nations if I'm fighting as the Agakoyo Queendom, trying to take back, what is rightfully ours. It can't win. We need all of us on board. But if we constantly look at, and then you see, when we constantly look at ourselves as Kenyan, Nigerian, then we give the constructs of that so much power. We give the government, which is just there to literally govern the mental and keep this social order of Kenya and Uganda and South Africa and Swaziland going. At least Swaziland was free, had their kingdom, although they're trying to turn that into a mental state. But as long as they keep this mental state going and they can have us believing this, then they can have their puppets in place, they can have their system in place, and then we're playing in their field. And their field is not a level playing field, beloveds. Excuse the construction that's going on in the background. And it's not a level playing field. So we have to, that's why it's so important on the one hand to find out more about your individual culture, because that's where your power lies. Your power doesn't lie in the country that you were born in. Your power lies in understanding the long heritage of the kingdoms and queendoms that you were born in, why they did things a certain way, and get that information while it's still available. If you have a chance, sit with an elder. Ask them about things, about how their childhood was, what life was like back then. Because we don't ask enough of the right questions as a people, beloveds. And really start to disconnect yourself from seeing yourself as a certain country to seeing yourself as, in order to get out of this, we're going to have to move beyond Kenya, South Africa, etc., etc. Like spiritually, move beyond that mental state they've put you in that you belong to this small part. Because it's only through division that they've been able to conquer. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Tuko pamoja.